The news that a well-known Hollywood starlet had been engaged in a terrible accident in 2022 shocked the entire United States. In the middle of a peaceful neighborhood, her car lost control at a high speed, smashed directly into a house, and caught fire. And the driver was none other than Anne Heche, an actress who had previously held the highest position in Hollywood. It was more than an accident that followed. The world had to wait for every update from the hospital while she lay still in a silent battle for survival. What actually transpired in the last seconds prior to the collision then? And was this the culmination of a lengthy series of catastrophes that had been quietly taking place for years? Or was it really just an accident? Come along as we reveal the complete truth behind this tale in this video. On May 25, 1969, Anne Heche was born in Aurora, Ohio. She was the youngest of Donald and Joe Heche and Nancy Heche's 5 children. They appeared to be a pious Christian family. However, behind the church services existed an unstable life where anything may happen at any time. Her upbringing was equally turbulent and controversial as her later, glamorous and scandal-plagued Hollywood career. The family was never truly stable thanks to her father. He was always looking for easy ways to get rich, but he kept failing. The family was compelled to relocate often as a result. Nevertheless, he was able to secure employment at churches thanks to his musical ability. However, this also meant that the family frequently had to switch faiths, as though everything in their lives was transient. However, Anne was unaware that secrets were the foundation of her family. In addition to being unstable, her father was also concealing a portion of who he really was. The family was unaware for many years that he had a terrible disease and kept secrets from them. The truth then emerged from death rather than a confession. Anne's father died in 1983 when she was still quite little. It was cancer, he claimed. However, just before he passed away, the family read an article about AIDS, a disease they had never heard of. And that was the true reason. Her father was not simply taken away by that revelation. The last bit of trust Anne had was totally destroyed. However, the tragedy didn't end there. Her brother Nathan died in a vehicle accident just 3 months later. The family was almost completely decimated by 2 losses that happened so quickly, so abruptly, and so devastatingly. From a life that was already precarious, they experienced total adversity. They lost their house to foreclosure. They had to flee and rely on the generosity of churchgoers to survive. Anne had to labor to make ends meet at a time when many people are still protected. Not out of passion, but because it was the only way to get money, she stood at a roadside hamburger stand singing show tunes to draw customers. She later earned relatively little working at a dinner theater. However, it was during the most trying times of her life that she made her stage debut. Not as a fantasy, but as a means of escape. The family was packed into a 1-bedroom apartment with no privacy and no opportunity for healing when they relocated to Chicago. Living in confinement with her mother and sister, Anne carried unprocessed losses. However, something started to take shape in that setting, a wish to escape. Not only from poverty, but also from the control, suffering, and secrets that had marred her early years. The fact that Anne Heche had to mature too quickly in a world that had never been safe was possibly more terrifying than everything she had lost. Then a chance emerged to show Anne a different route for the first time, rather than to instantly alter everything. She started performing more frequently at Francis W. Parker School. It was no longer merely a haven from the actual world. Over time, acting became her only means of expressing who she really was, a version unrestricted by the past or current conditions. She acted in plays such as Bury the Dead in the Skin of Our Teeth. A talent scout saw her there. Anne received an invitation to try out for As the World Turns when she was 16 years old. She traveled to New York with her mother, attended the audition, and was chosen. However, the door that had just opened swiftly shut. Not because she was unstable, but rather because she lacked the authority to make her own decisions. She had to decline it. That was more than simply a squandered chance. It was the first time Anne understood that skill was insufficient on its own. However, Anne continued. A second chance with a different planet arrived in 1987. She didn't look away this time. Anne was cast after 2 auditions, and a few days after graduation, she decided to travel to New York in spite of her mother's disapproval. Not only was it her first role, but it was also her first move away from the past. Anne Hayes entered the acting industry somewhat carelessly, but she soon secured her first significant role in the television series Another World. But being cast wasn't the only thing that made her unique. It was the part she played. She portrayed twin twins Vicky Hudson and Marley Love in the show. 2 characters whose personalities are diametrically opposed. One was delicate and respectable, the other rebellious and complicated. It was a real test of transformation rather than merely an acting task. Anne also passed it. She not only maintained the position for about 4 years, from 1987 to 1991, but she also made it the first pivotal moment in her career. Her 1991 Daytime Emmy victory for Outstanding Younger Actress in a Drama Series marked her pinnacle. Few people reach this degree of recognition at such a young age. She had trouble landing larger jobs in the ensuing years. She struggled to secure strong enough roles to make a name for herself in Hollywood, despite her talent and attractive features. Lacked breakthrough effect in a highly competitive climate where big names consistently dominated key projects and looked forced towards safe choices. When she starred in the critically acclaimed crime movie Donnie Brasco, which starred Johnny Depp and Al Pacino in 1997, everything started to change. Anne Heche did not play a major role in the criminal underground in Donnie Brasco. Instead, Johnny Depp's character's wife, Maggie Piston, did. However, that decision turned into a pivotal moment. Her role offered a profoundly human viewpoint that was grounded and full of silent suffering amid a suspenseful tale about the underworld, treachery, and hazy moral boundaries. To stand out, she didn't require dramatic words or action sequences. Rather, Anne enthralled audiences with sensitivity in every expression, uneasy eyes, a constrained voice, and the sense that she was constantly on the brink of an unreachable truth. Her performance suddenly stood out because of that honesty. Even though Anne shared the screen with celebrities like Johnny Depp and Al Pacino, many people said that she stole the show. Emotional depth, not ostentation. The screenwriter of the movie once acknowledged that adding more Anne Heche to the script would be the one alteration he would make. It was an uncommon compliment, but it showed how important her performance was. In addition to being a significant turning point in Anne Heche's career, Donnie Brasco demonstrated that she was more than simply a lovely face in Hollywood. Anne took the decision to shine through sensitivity and sincerity in a movie full of harsh and intense characters, which made her impossible to ignore. She was cast alongside Harrison Ford in her first major motion picture, 6 Days, 7 Nights, in 1998. Any actress would be thrilled to have this kind of opportunity. A commercial movie, a legendary co-star, and a big enough part to become famous. In this romantic adventure, Harrison Ford's pilot and Anne, a journalist from New York, were shipwrecked on a remote island. This wasn't just her first big-budget commercial picture role. It was also her opportunity to demonstrate her ability to manage a major project. Despite receiving poor reviews, the movie did well at the box office and made over 160 million USD worldwide, a person who made Anne more accessible to general audiences. Ironically, however, problems off-screen started to cloud her career just as she was aiming for success. Anne's same-sex relationship with Ellen DeGeneres was made public just one day prior to her casting in 6 Days, 7 Nights. This immediately became the focus of attention in late 1990s Hollywood, when discrimination was still pervasive. Despite this, she kept getting parts in Return to Paradise with Vince Vaughn and started to see a change in how the business perceived her. Opportunities are quickly vanishing, along with subtle warnings and rumors. "You will not get work because you are gay," she subsequently acknowledged was a straightforward statement that revealed the brutal realities of Hollywood at the time. Another aspect of Anne's acting, introspective, nuanced, and morally motivated, was exposed in Return to Paradise. In her role as Beth Eastern, she portrayed a woman attempting to convince two friends to go back to Southeast Asia in order to spare another friend from execution. The movie was a difficult commercial endeavor with a lot of moral controversy. Although the picture did not draw a large audience, critics acknowledged the depth of her portrayal. Once more, Anne was caught between two worlds, commerce and art, and did not entirely fit into either. In the same year, she accepted another difficult part in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, a reimagining of the 1960 classic. It was a daring choice. Marion Crane, who has long been linked to the famous picture of Janet Leigh, was portrayed by Anne. It was unavoidable to face comparisons while taking on such a legacy responsibility. In actuality, the 1998 version of Psycho did not earn positive reviews. The movie, which had a $60 million budget but only made roughly 37 million USD globally, was a commercial and critical failure. Nonetheless, other commentators noted that Anne's portrayal of Marion Crane was gentler, more obstinate, and more contemporary than the original. It's interesting to note that while Anne Heche regularly starred in major motion pictures throughout 1998, it was also one of the few occasions in her career that she did so. The significant positions that appeared to be about to start a new chapter did not result in the breakthrough that many had anticipated. In 1999, Agnieszka Holland's spiritual and philosophical film, The Third Miracle, starring Anne Heche and Ed Harris, was released. Once more, she prioritized depth over commercially successful endeavors. Her reputation as a serious actress who prioritized artistic integrity above glitz was strengthened by this choice. However, it also progressively pushed her out of Hollywood's mainstream, where visibility and box office receipts are frequently used to gauge success. Anne did not vanish. Rather, she started to exist in a more subdued setting where her skill was nevertheless acknowledged. However, she was no longer the direct focus of the spotlight. However, Anne Heche unintentionally found a different stage rather than coming back with a big movie. Broadway was one that required more than just fame. She further cemented her position in 2004 when she starred with Alec Baldwin in the drama 20th Century. Anne was more than just charming and vivacious in her role as a chorus girl turned theater star. She demonstrated her mastery of a live stage where errors and second takes are not tolerated. She was nominated for a Tony Award for Best Actress in a Play, one of the greatest accolades in American theater, for her performance. One thing was evident when she was nominated for a Saturn Award for The Dead Will Tell and a Primetime Emmy Award for Gracie's Choice around the same time. Anne was still a name that the music industry could not ignore, even though she was no longer at the center of Hollywood. However, Anne did not entirely return to the Hollywood spotlight in the manner that many had previously anticipated, despite all of that acclaim, award accolades, and highly regarded performances. A few years later, she starred in Spread, a movie that was completely unrelated to her previous endeavors. Spread was a candid examination of the opulent and transactional way of life in contemporary Los Angeles, rather than a complex piece of art or theater. The movie centers on Nicky, a young man who makes his living by wooing affluent ladies in return for comfort, money, and accommodation. Relationships in that universe are based on power, attraction, and unwritten agreements rather than feelings. Anne H. portrayed Samantha, one of Nicky's lovers and a prosperous, accomplished woman. The part was uncomfortable. Samantha was neither empathetic nor romantic. She was a strong, domineering, and somewhat aloof lady who was used